and then we'll start the training. So I'll start with my introduction. So hi, my name is Samarth Narula. I'm currently working as a technical architect, tech lead. I have 6 years of total experience, and I'm going to be your trainer for today's training. Now we can start with your introductions. So anyone can start. Maybe
I can do a quick round. So
Tom.
basically, we've let's say met on the basic training, and since the invitation got, I jumped on the advanced one as well. I'm working as a Java dev, also as a lead, as a team lead as well. But yeah, I didn't really plan to do this exam, but since the invitation came, I jumped on the train, and let's see what you have for us.
Nice. Okay, so more people are joining. Venkat is joining. Okay, David, maybe you can go next.
Yes, hi, I'm David from Germany. I'm also a software developer, mainly in Java, and doing Spring for 5 years now.
Nice.
And yeah, I want to catch up with the, had like one and a half year break with Spring, so doing other things, and now I want to go on track again. Many things changed since new releases.
Many things changed, trust me.
Yeah.
Like I've been upgrading the versions of the Spring Boot projects that I have for the teaching purposes. So I know there are many major changes, be it Spring Security. AOP doesn't have much changes, but Spring Security has a lot of changes. Spring Cloud modules have a lot of changes, a lot of new configurations. So there are a lot of changes. Okay, nice. Dheeraj, you can go next.
Hello everyone, this is Umarkar here. I'm completing my postgraduate diploma in CDI Mumbai. That's all.
Nice. Bhagishri, you can go next. Maybe Monica, you can go next.
Hey, so I've been a software developer in a Java software developer for 4 years already. And well, I heard about MicroStream at one of the conferences, so I've joined. This is my first course with you, so let's see.
Hope to see you in more in the upcoming trainings as well. So good you joined. Since you have seen that MicroStream, so I'm also going to give you walkthrough of a MicroStream Spring Boot project which I have built, and how you can also use this project as a skeleton project in your Office application, or just pick the code from here and paste it there and it will work. Nice. Okay, then we have Nuruddin, you can go next.
Hi, my name is Nuruddin Yusuf. I'm a software developer. I've been writing code for a couple of years now, and I have an understanding of Spring Boot to an extent. So joining this training, I want to also learn more on how to use technology, and most especially MicroStream with this AOP in Spring Boot.
Nice. AOP is very powerful, Niruddin. So once you learn this AOP, I can tell you what I'm going to demonstrate is the logging and auditing, but you can also enable rate limiting for your application APIs using AOP concepts and the constructs. You can have many more things with AOP, transaction management, exception handling. Although there's a ready-made exception handler which Spring Boot provides, which they have built using Spring Boot AOP itself, but you can build your custom solutions, a lot of custom solutions using Spring Boot AOP. Okay, then we have Sagar. Sagar, I've seen you in previous trainings. Happy to have you back.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I work in automation domain, Java, Selenium, and I'm learning as much as I can through, in Spring Boot and Java.
Nice. Okay, Ratna, you can go next. Okay, guys, feel free to share this link with your friends who are working as a Java developer or in the Java domain. Then we have Venkat. You can go next. Okay. Kahina is having mic issue, I believe. Okay, I think that's perfect. More people will join in some time, I believe. So right now we have 13 participants. Okay, so this is the curriculum. We'll start with Spring Security. And in Spring Security, you're going to learn about form-based security, and you're going to learn about how to add username password-based authentication and role-based authorization. So that is what we are going to cover at a high level. And also along the way, we'll be learning about Bcrypt, which is an encryption algorithm, because we'll be encrypting and storing our password in the database. Then you're going to learn about Spring Boot AOP. In AOP, you learn about how to create different advices and how to use AOP and what problems you can solve by using AOP. So as part of this AOP course, we are going to solve the cross-cutting concern logic of logging and auditing. But there is much more things which you can do by using AOP. So once you understand the concepts and the annotations and the code of AOP, then you can use it to solve any custom, like basically use it to solve any problem and create custom solutions for the problems. Basically, you can implement interceptor microservice design pattern by using Spring Boot AOP. Then you're going to learn about MicroStream. I'll give you walkthrough of one MicroStream PPT, and then I'll give you walkthrough of a application, Spring Boot MicroStream application, which I've built, which basically stores the data into local file system and reads the data into local file system and allows you to perform CRUD operations or the data which is stored in your local file system. At a high level, MicroStream is a library which you can use in your Spring Boot application. What it does is basically it is a next level serialization framework. It allows you to save your Java objects into your file system without having to implement Java serializable interface. So it is basically solving, or you can say overcoming, the problems of Java serialization framework. Okay, good. Let's start. So let's start with Spring Security. So how many of you have a background with Spring Boot already? And how many of you have like only a high level idea? I believe everyone has idea then. Okay. 1 minute, let me just admin few people. Okay. All right.
As I said, I had you mean in the chat? Okay.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. All right, let's start with Spring Security. Let me open the slides. So we'll be starting with Spring Security, where we'll start with the introduction, then different implementations, and then what we are going to cover as part of this course, then all these things. Okay, let's start. So agenda. Understand the place of Spring Security in the domain of security in computer science. Let's understand security first in computer science. So there are different layers of security. So what are the different layers of security? We have hardware security, we have network security, and we have operating system security. So what is hardware security? Hardware security means basically securing and uniquely identifying the other trusted system. Basically, physically securing your hardware is the purpose of having hardware security. Then you have network security. Network security deals with transport layer security and firewalls. What traffic is allowed in your network, what traffic is allowed to go out of your network. Then you have operating system level security. In operating system level security, we have user access control, We have software restrictions. Basically, in your office laptops, you must be having software restrictions with softwares you can install, and you have application security. Now let's understand application security. So application security focuses on good coding practices, proper data handling, application user access control. And this is the part in the application security where Spring Security comes into picture. Spring Security allows us to have application user access control. So what is Spring Security? It provides J2EE application security services, helps to secure enterprise applications and internet-facing applications. Spring Security provides authentication. What does authentication means? Authentication means who can access. It also provides authorization. Authorization means what the authenticated user can access, basically roles. Which role authenticated user has, based on that, he can access few things and he cannot access other things. So that was the high level about the understanding the place of Spring Security in place of security in the domain of computer science. Now, before we begin, let's understand some basic terminologies in Spring Security. So as part of this topic, let's understand key terminologies in Spring Security, types of authentication, understanding the filters in Spring Security. So let's start with key terminologies in Spring Security. Key terminologies in Spring Security are authentication. Authentication means only the people who have correct username and password, they should be able to access our application. They will be authenticated using that. Then is authorization. Authorization means what the authenticated user can do. So based on the role that the authenticated user will have, based on that, he will be able to access few APIs and he won't be able to access the other APIs. Principal. Currently logged in user is called as principal. Granted authority. Granted authority is nothing but the role that a currently logged in user has. So what authority currently logged in principal has, that's called as granted authority. Role. Role is nothing but a set of permission. So if you have a store owner role, you'll be able to access all the APIs of an e-commerce application. If you have a store clerk role, you'll be able to access only few APIs of your e-commerce application. And as part of this application, as part of this course, Spring Security course, what you're going to learn is I'm going to show you one e-commerce based web application, API based application, and we are going to implement Spring Security on top of that. Now let's understand types of authentication. What are the different types of authentication? We have knowledge based authentication. Basically, if you know a username password, then you can log in. So that's called as knowledge based authentication. Then is possession based authentication. If you possess some kind of a token or authenticator app in your phone using which you are getting the tokens or OTPs, which is getting regenerated every 60 seconds or 30 seconds, that's called as possession based authentication. Then is multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication means first you'll enter your username and password. After that, you'll have to enter the auto-generated token. That's called as multi-factor authentication. Now let's understand filters in Spring Security. What are filters? You can imagine this is your API request. It's coming to your microservice application, Spring Boot-based microservice application. Whenever a request comes from the browser, it comes to the dispatcher servlet and it goes over here first. If you are implementing Spring Security, it will go to the filter first. So there are different Spring Security filters here. This API request will come here. It will check the username and password in the API request. If it's valid, it will authenticate itself. And based on that user's role, it will allow it to access check inventory API or view inventory API or both the APIs. So this is how the filters work. It's a layer in between your APIs and your API request. So basically this security filter is nothing but a layer in between your APIs and the API request. And it filters the API request based on the authentication and authorization. Now let's start with the hands-on. So first I'll give you hands-on of the provided Spring Boot application. I'll give you code walkthrough and then the functionality walkthrough. Let me first check. Have I commented everything? Okay. Okay, let's start with the code walkthrough. We have the POM file. This is the POM file. We are using the latest version of Spring Boot, which is 3.0.2. We are using JDK 17 because from Spring Boot version 3.0.0 onwards, it's mandatory that you'll have to use JDK 17 and above. You cannot use the earlier versions. Then these are the dependencies which we have added. So we are using JPA for performing CRUD operations onto our database entities. I've added the web dependency to get the embedded Tomcat server and for creating APIs, RESTful APIs. We have the H2 database. So I've added the H2 database dependency. To avoid boilerplate code, we have Lombok. Test dependency is there, but we are not writing any test. For getting the API documentation, I've used Spring Doc. So it gives us the API documentation so that we don't need to use Postman for testing our APIs. Then I have added Spring Boot starter validation and Jakarta validation API. This is just needed with the latest version. If you're using Spring Boot latest version, if you don't add this, you'll get unnecessary error in the console. Then we'll add the Spring security dependency as we'll go through different topics in this course. Then I've added the DevTools dependency to basically for rapid application development so that after every change, I don't need to manually stop and start the application. I might have to remove DevTools in this course, reason being Spring security sometimes doesn't really works well with DevTools. So let me just comment out DevTools because it might just cause issues during the training. It caches few things. Okay. Now let me provide you, okay, before the functionality walkthrough, this was about the POM file. Now, this is the base package, com.example.security. And these are the sub packages. This is the config package, controller package, entity package, repository package, service package, service IMPL package. Then we have the application.properties. Here we have configured the H2 database, and this is the URL for connecting to the H2 database, not the URL. Basically, this is what you'll have to enter when you navigate to the H2 console. I have not set any password because so that consistently, like whenever we have to log in, we'll have to type that password. To avoid that, I'm currently not setting any password here. Then in order for the data.sql to get executed in the latest version of Spring Boot, if it gives issue with Spring security, you need to add these properties and then your data.sql file will get executed. Your data.sql file has the insert statements and these insert statements gets executed on application start. And for this to work, you need to add these properties. We are going to comment and uncomment these properties as we go through different topics in this course. Okay, my font size. Is my font size visible now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks guys. All right, moving to the main file. This is the main file, simple looking main files, no fancy annotations here. And these files we are going to comment and uncomment as we go through different topics in this course. Then this is the home controller. If you go to the home API, basic like the base API, you'll get this welcome. Then this is the retail store controller. I've added a prefix in front of all the APIs, which is organic veggies. And these are the APIs. We have the check inventory, view inventory, make announcement, view financials, do checkout. I'm going to give you walkthrough of these APIs. So basically it's a e-commerce application. If you have a store clerk who wants to basically check the inventory, whether it's available or not, he can use this API. If he wishes to view all the inventory, he can view inventory using this. If he wants to check out for a customer, he can use the checkout API. Now these are the entity classes. We have the employee entity class, which will be our employees. So employee has a ID, name, monthly salary. We have inventory details. In inventory details, we have ID, item name, number of items available, and price. Then we have yearly financial report, how the e-commerce business is performing. So it has ID, here, year, basically which year financial report this is, net revenue, material cost, net profit. Then we have the JPA repositories. This is the employee repository for performing CRUD operations onto the employee table. So these are the entity classes. So when I start this application, it will become employee table, and these fields will become the columns of the employee table. So employee table will have ID column, name column, monthly salary column. And we'll use this for performing CRUD operations onto our employee table. Then we have inventory details repository. This will be used for performing CRUD operations onto our inventory details table. Then we have yearly financial report repository. This will be used for performing CRUD operations onto our yearly financial report table. Then we have the service. So this is retail store. This is just a interface, and this is the concrete implementing class of this interface. And we have auto-wired all the JPA repositories that we have so that we can perform CRUD operations onto these three corresponding tables. And this is the logic for check inventory. If exist, we use the inventory details repository exist by ID JPA method, and we check whether inventory exists by ID. Then if we want to view all inventory, we use the find all JPA method, and we get all the columns or all the rows from inventory details. Then if we want to make announcement, we are simply taking this discount as a method argument and returning a string discount like 50% off, 60% off, that way. Then we have view financials. It will return us all the rows from the view financial report using the JPA method find all. Then for checkout, we are returning a string fake checkout. So that's about the functionality code walkthrough. Now let me give you functionality walkthrough. So let's start the application. Okay, is it now visible, guys? The font size? Okay. Okay, our application has started. It's running on port 8080. So I'll navigate to new tab 8080, and let's go to Swagger UI / index.html. So this is the URL for accessing Swagger UI. I'm sharing this over chat. These are our APIs. So this is the base API that I was talking about, which returns welcome. And this is that base API. Then we have, let's start with view inventory. So we have inserted some inventory details using data.sql. So we have inserted these inventories. We have inserted chips, hide and seek biscuit, apple, banana, bandage, oats, 1 kg salt packet. And these are the employees: Raman Hari, Sahil Shah, Akshay Shaligram, Akshita Chawla, Suchita Roy. Then this is the yearly financial report data. Okay, let's view the inventory. So we can use the Swagger UI and we can get all the inventory details. So this is how we can quickly test our APIs by using Swagger UI. And for configuring this Swagger UI, I have not done anything special. Just I've added one dependency and it automatically gave me the Swagger UI. And the dependency that I've added is Spring Doc dependency. Let me show you that dependency. Yeah, this is the dependency which I've added: Spring Doc Open API Starter Web MVC UI. This is giving me this beautiful Swagger UI for testing all my APIs and for API development. Let's say after viewing inventory, I want to check whether a particular inventory exists by ID. So let's say I check whether any inventory exists by ID. It says true. So there is some inventory with ID 1. If I want to view financials, I can view financials. This is the financial report for 2022 and 2023. And you can see it's returning JSON data here. Then if I want to do some checkout, I can just do this checkout. It returns fake checkout. If I want to give some discounts, I can give some discounts. Let's say I want to give 50% discount and it says 50% off. Then yeah, so that's all the APIs that we have, and this is just schema details. Okay, next let's go here. We have this also. Okay, now next is if you want to access the H2 console, we can go to H2 console. Oh, yeah. So 1 minute. I think Spring security is somehow there. So let me just start it again. Let's see what's going wrong here. So we are able to access the data but not view the tables for some reason. So it's inserting data, but H2 console is not enabled. Yes, I think one property is missing here, this one. So in order to enable H2 console, we need to add this property spring.h2.console enabled equal to true. Now I need to restart the application and it will enable the H2 console. When you implement Spring security, you will see that the start time of the application increases. Right now it will start very quickly. See, now H2 has become available. So now we can see H2 console available at H2 console. Okay, so let's go here. So now we are able to log in here. Let's enter the correct details here. So let's copy the URL. The database name is veggies.tb. Let's paste it here. Username is admin. We don't have any password. So let's connect. So we have successfully logged into our H2 database. If we want to view the employees, which employees we have, we can write a select query. Let's say after that, we want to view inventory details. Then we want to view yearly financial report. So we can view the data in the database. This is the data that we have. These are the employees that we have. This is the inventories that we have. And these are the yearly financial reports for last 2 years. So that's about the functionality walkthrough. Do you have any doubts about the functionality or any questions about the functionality that you have not understood? Before we proceed to next topic, if you have any doubts.
Yeah, I have a question regarding your architecture that you made interfaces for the services. I'm usually doing that for API stuff, for the controllers. But what purpose is there behind that you use interfaces for the?
Yeah, solid principles, auto wire by the interface and not by the concrete implementing
Yeah,
class.
that's right. Yeah, but do you have an example for
Yeah.
why this could be useful?
Yes. So, okay, good question. So
Yeah,
let's
because
say
of I know that you can have multiple implementations of that, but usually, yeah, I don't know.
yes.
I didn't came across
Okay.
since now for something that
So
needed
you
this.
can got your point. So you can have two concrete implementations for this interface, and in
Yeah.
that case, you can mark one particular implementation as @ primary.
Yeah.
And let's say if you don't specify which one is, I mean, if you don't specify in your controller, if you don't specify here, which like here we are auto wiring by the interface and not by the concrete implementing classes. So in this case, if you have two implementations of this interface, so it will by default pick the primary implementation. And if you want it to pick the secondary implementation, in that case, you'll have to, let's say we have a secondary implementation. Okay. And let's say here it returns good question, good checkout. Okay, just an example, just to make an example. Now let's say I start my application. Okay, wait, not there. Yeah, save this file, save this file, save. Let me close all. Okay, now I have two concrete implementations of this. I have marked this one as primary and I've not marked this one as primary. In this case, by default, it will pick up the implementation of this one, which will return fake checkout. So let's start the application. Let me demonstrate this concept. I have also one more shortcut which I've explored, which is not available on the internet. I'll show you that, because primary and qualifier is available, but there is one more good shortcut, and that is based on the understanding that I have, like how Spring Boot loads the classes, how it names the classes that gets loaded into the Spring container as beans. Okay, let's see what is going wrong. So let me go to the controller. We have retail store service. We have this as @primary. This as this one is @primary. Okay, we have marked this one as okay. We have, this is the problem. I mistakenly copied it and I marked both as primary. So it's not able to identify which is really primary. You cannot have two primaries. So that's why it was giving error. So I'm just making this one as primary and I'm not adding @primary here now. Now this time it will create object of this class. It's same thing as in core Java, how you do, like you just, let me just write it over here. Let this start, then I'll start writing it. Otherwise it will pick up that change, incomplete change and break. In core Java, we write like this, right? New retail store IMPL2. If you want to create object of IMPL2, you write it like this, right? So here what Spring Boot says is IOC, inversion of control. You don't worry about which object to create. You leave that on me. It's called dependency injection or IOC. So leave that on me. You just auto wire by interface. If you want to give preference to this one, mark this as preference and don't mark this one at all. Now, since we have marked this one as preference, it will return fake checkout. So let's go here, fake checkout. Now, if we mark instead of this one as primary, it will give preference to this one, good checkout, IMPL2. It will create object of this one. Let it restart. Sorry guys, I know it's going a little off topic, but since it was a doubt from one of
it's
the
good
students,
one actually, yeah.
Okay. So here I execute, you see good checkout. Now
you could also do this by qualifier, right? So let's say
qualifier,
if
yes,
you want to have
qualifier.
both implementations, you could use the qualifier.
Correct. And without using qualifier also it is possible. Here we'll have to provide a bean name, right? So without using qualifier also it's possible. Let me show you how. Let's say we have not used @primary or anything. In that case, if you want this implementation, you copy this name as it is and you paste it here. You make it camel case because that's the bean name of this class.
Interesting, yeah, because it's the default bean name. Yeah.
So it will be using this implementation too, right?
Correct.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, it's not started. It's taking time. Now it's started. It took 23 seconds. So you see, implementation too. So if you
Nice.
want
Thank
this
you.
one, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yes, if you want this one, just you pick this up and add it here like this and make it camel case. Okay, I mean this. Okay, so I'll just revert this code back to the original one. So let me get rid of this class now. Okay, so we are back to the original implementation of things. Error, where is error? Think the import done. I just use Control Shift O to optimize import to remove unused imports. Okay, moving to the next one. What are the different implementations of Spring Security and what we will cover in this course? So we have form-based security, we have token-based security, and as part of this course, you're going to learn about form-based security. Now let's start with the first hands-on. Inject Spring Security dependency in the POM file. So I'm going to add the Spring dependency in the POM file and demonstrate the default implementation. So we'll understand what is the default behavior. Default behavior is it will add a mandatory authentication for URLs for all APIs. It will add login form. It will handle that login form will be able to handle the login error. It will add a logout form also. It will create a default username as user, and it will set a default password which will be visible in the console. So and we are going to do all of this. So let's get started. So let's stop the application. Let's go to the POM file. Let's add the Spring dependency. So let's, okay, this one. One moment. Okay, let's go back here. Here, go back here. So all I'm doing is I'm adding the Spring dependency. Naga Gopal, you can register for my Spring fundamentals course. In that I focus on auto wired and all the basics. This is a Spring security one. So I have a fundamental course coming up in September. Yes. So let me do that. Since you're asking, let me share about me. You guys can follow me or send me connection request on LinkedIn and on follow me on GitHub for all the application codes, because I keep posting about my upcoming trainings. I train on multiple topics: Spring Boot, cloud trainings, and Kubernetes, Docker, Helm, everything. Okay. So I've added the Spring security dependency. Now I'll start the application. Let's wait for the application to start. Let me close these tabs. In order to avoid any caching issues, I'll be using incognito. Let's say I go to the base URL also. It will add a authentication. Application has not started yet. Let's wait for it to start. Okay, application has started now. So let's go here. Let's go to localhost base URL. You can see it has redirected me to the login form. The default username is user and password is printed in the console. So let's get the password from here. This is the password. This is the default behavior when you add just a Spring Boot Spring security dependency. Now it also adds a logout form, so you can log out of the current user. let's say you enter a wrong password. So it handles it gives you an error page. It handles the wrong user entered password also. So it says bad credentials. So that is about the default behavior of the Spring Boot application. Now let's understand how to disable the default generated username and password. So how to basically disable Spring security without removing the dependency. So in order to do that, we can exclude these files from getting loaded into the Spring container on application start. We need to avoid loading Spring auto configuration and management web security auto configuration. Just copy paste these 2 lines and it will magically work. So let's start the application. It will now disable Spring security itself without you having to remove the dependency. Okay, so we have disabled Spring security now. Let's try to access. So you can see we have successfully disabled Spring security. Okay, before we proceed to this hands-on, do you have any questions so far? If everyone is clear so far, you can write clear in the chat and we'll proceed to this hands-on. Perfect. Okay. Now let's customize the login username and password using application.properties. Let's first again enable Spring security. Let's load these classes. In order to provide a custom username password, we can provide a custom username and password for all our APIs using this property. Spring.security.user.name and the username, spring.security.user.password and the password. Now let's restart the application and try to log in using these credentials. Let's access this now. So what are the credentials? Our username is Samarth and password is admin. Let's enter admin here. Let's sign in. So you can see that we are able to log in using our custom provided credential. Let's move to the next hands-on, customizing the login username and password by creating security configuration file. So as part of this hands-on, you're going to learn about how to create security configuration file to create in-memory authentication, username, password, and role. We're going to create a username Samarth and the password for Samarth will also be Samarth and the role will be store owner. Then we will see the following exception and its fixed by defining a password encoder. So we are going to see when we get this illegal argument exception, there is no password encoder mapped for the ID null. Okay, so we want to create username password now from the configuration file. So let's uncomment this file. Let's comment this out. Let H2 break first. Let's see the exception. Let's also comment this user out. Let's Okay, we are good. Let's start this application. So this is the security configuration within memory class. So with in-memory authentication, basically we're going to create a username and password and store it in the heap, basically in memory. Since it's a configuration class, we have annotated this class with @configuration. Since it's a Spring security configuration class, we've also annotated this class with @enable web security. And for logging purpose, we have used Lombok annotation @slf4j, which is instantiating a logger factory for us. Now, here in the latest version, we don't need to implement any interface. We can directly define a bean like this. So in this bean, you can see I'm creating a user using user details. Now user details is from Spring Framework Security Core package, and using the builder design pattern dot builder, I'm creating a username for a user. Username is Samarth and the password is Samarth. And I'm creating a role for him, which is store clerk. And this build will basically build a user object, user detail object. Now, in order to add this user for the in-memory authentication, we need to return new in-memory user detail manager, and we need to pass this user. So this takes a string array string, basically user details array. So we can pass any number, not string array, sorry, user details array. So we can pass any number of user detail objects here. Now that we have created this, let's try to log in with this. What do you think? Will it work or will it break? Let's try to log in. So it is going to break. I'll tell you the reason. So it's not doing anything. It's not even redirecting anywhere. So if you go to your console, you'll see this illegal argument exception. It says illegal argument exception. There is no password encoder mapped for the ID null. So it's mandatory that you'll have to add password encoder from Spring Boot 2 versions. Let's say for namesake, if you're adding a password encoder, you can add no ops password encoder. It's a deprecated method, not a recommended one. I'll tell you the recommended one in the upcoming topics. Now that we have added a password encoder, let's try to start the application again. Okay, I've restarted the application. Now let's say I try to log in with Samarth. Okay, it's again breaking. I think application has not started just now. Let me, for safer end, open a new tab. Copy this, close this, paste it here. Enter Samarth. So it's working now. So if you define a password encoder, it will start working. So it's a no ops password encoder basically. Let's go to the next one. Let's start with this one. We have created one username and password, which is Samarth. Let's create another user, Rohan, and then I'll demo how to switch between multiple login users. So in order to add another user, we again need to build an object of user details and pass this object to in-memory user detail manager. So you just write comma separated here because this takes an array of user details. Is everyone back from the break?
Hope so.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So is this role-based security?
Yeah, we'll come to the role-based part. So right now, just focusing on authentication. When we'll move to Spring Security with JDBC, like storing your username and password in the database, that time we'll learn about how to add authorization. So right now, the focus is only on authentication. Okay, now let's open a new tab. Okay, so is the app? I think we didn't restart the application. Let's restart the application again.
So these users are not added into H2 database right now, right?
It's in memory.
It's
It's
in
in the
memory.
heap, JVM heap area. JVM memory, heap memory basically. So if anybody gets a heap dump, they can extract out these username passwords because it's not even encoded so far. It's plain text. Okay, so our application is up. So let's go to localhost. So let's log in with new user first, Rohan. Let's log in with Rohan. What's the password for Rohan? It's Rohan. In order to log out, so we have logged in with Rohan. Now we are logging out of Rohan. Now we'll log in with Samarth. Let's log in with Samarth. So we have now logged in with Samarth. So this is how you can switch between multiple login users, like login with username, password, logout, login that way. You can have concurrent login from 2 different users as well, because each user activity goes as one thread. Now there is an issue with H2 console UI. So after implementing Spring Security, we didn't try to access H2 console, right? Now, since we are logged in, if we try to access H2 console and if we try to connect to H2 console, we'll see this error. So it's giving us forbidden. That's because H2 has its own security. So we don't want to, enforce another level of security. We need to ignore Spring Security onto H2. How do we do that? We need to define this bean, Web Security Customizer. It basically ignores Spring Security onto H2. So in the latest version, this is the exact piece of code which you'll have to add for ignoring security onto your database, H2 database. This problem will not happen if you're using other databases, but since H2 is an embedded database, you need to ignore Spring Security on top of that. Now, let's restart the application again. So let's start it. And this should fix the issue because now Spring Security will be ignored onto H2 console UI. So there will be no Spring Security for H2. Let the application start. You see one more thing. For the Spring Boot application, in order to communicate for the JPA, in order to communicate with the H2 console, it requires H2 dialect. Similarly, in order to communicate with the MySQL database or Postgres database, it requires the respectful dialect. So this is dialect is required because a conversion happens. So all the objects, the employee objects, which are stored in the memory, whenever you're persisting it, it needs to convert. So what this dialect does is, what JPA or any language or any ORM does is, it converts that object graph into your database specific language or construct and then pushes to your database. That's why you require this dialect. And when we'll use MicroStream, you will see that we don't require any dialect, we don't require any entity classes. MicroStream will make life very simple. So we'll come to MicroStream post learning Spring Boot security. Okay, back to where we were. So we were seeing that we were not able to load the H2 console. Now we should be able to load the H2 console. So let's try to access the H2 console. Let's try to log in. So now you see, once we have ignored Spring Security onto H2 console, we are able to access the H2 console UI. So this is the fix for it. Simply remember, you'll get the access to this code by the end of today's session. I'll push all this code to a GitHub repo, and you can always refer from them there, or you can fork my GitHub repo. Okay, now the password that we are storing in memory is also plain text. So anybody who can have access to the heap dump can extract out the password. How do we secure the password which is in the memory? We can secure by using bcrypt algorithm. So as part of this hands-on, we're going to learn about what is bcrypt. Then we'll implement bcrypt for encrypting password and storing in memory for authentication. So what is bcrypt? Bcrypt is a type of a password encoder, and we are going to encrypt our password with this password encoder and store it in our application memory for authentication. So I'll show you how we can use this algorithm. Bcrypt is also known as one-way password encoder. What's the meaning of one-way password encoder? One-way password encoder means once you have encoded your plain text password, you cannot decode back your password. You cannot decode your password back to the plain text. So it's a one-way password encoder. You can encrypt a text to an encrypted password, but you cannot decrypt the encrypted password back to the plain text password. So encoded password cannot be decoded back to the original password. That's why bcrypt is called as one-way password encoder. So we're going to implement bcrypt for encrypting password and storing in memory for authentication. In this in-memory authentication, you will not be able to see the encrypted password, but when we'll move to the JDBC based authentication, that time you'll be able to see the encrypted password which is stored in the database. So right now, if you remember, by default, we have implemented no ops password encoder. So password is stored as plain text in memory, which compromises security. So let's learn how to encrypt password and store in the application memory. So in order to encrypt the password, we need to use bcrypt password encoder. And once we use bcrypt password encoder, while providing the password, we need to encrypt and store the password. Create here. So this will encrypt Samarth using bcrypt algorithm, and it will store the encrypted password into the in-memory. Now, there won't be any difference, but still let's try to log in again since we have made code changes. There will be no changes for us, but at least for the password which is stored in the memory, it will be encrypted and stored. Okay, so let's wait for the application. So our application has started. Let's go back. Let's log in. Let's log in with Samarth. So we have successfully logged in with Samarth. We can log out, log in, do anything. That's about in-memory authentication. Now let's start with JDBC based authentication. Before we proceed to JDBC based authentication, do you have any doubts still here?
So I didn't get that one-time encoder, but you cannot decrypt, meaning what exactly?
Once you've encoded your password, you cannot decode your password.
Back to original?
Yes. So how it works is when you pass the password from here, when I type Samarth here in the password, it again encrypts it with bcrypt and it compares the two encrypted passwords. And if the two encrypted passwords matches, the one which you have passed from UI, it encrypts that, and the one which is stored in an encrypted format in the memory, it compares the two encrypted hash values. If they match, then it authenticates you. That is how it internally works. Okay, does that answers your question?
Yeah.
You'll understand it much better like when you see the encrypted password, and you're going to see the encrypted password when we'll store in the database, because we can log into the database and we can see. Right now it's in the memory, JVM memory, so we cannot see. It's in the heap dump. If you extract out heap dump, you'll be able to see or search it. Let's build the JDBC authentication schema, users, roles, and password. So as part of this hands-on, we're going to build JDBC authentication with H2 database as data source, with default schema and with usernames, passwords, and their roles. We're going to create same users and roles as we have in memory authentication. We're going to verify our changes by logging into H2. Now guys, there's one problem with latest version of Spring Boot with 3 onwards. If you want to have JDBC based authentication, you won't be able to use this from here. I mean, this you won't be able to configure your database from here. If you try to configure your database from here, it simply doesn't works. It gives a lot of issues. So let's comment out this part. So we are removing the configuration of H2 from here. We are going to configure H2 database using this configuration file. So I've created this simple driver data source factory which implements data source factory, and here I have created this object data source, and I'm setting the driver name by passing to this one URL, and basically overriding the get connection properties and overriding things here. And I'm setting the username as admin, password as admin. Now let's go here. Now I'm using embedded database builder, and I'm using embedded database type as H2, and generate unique name as false because I'm giving my own database name as veggiesdb. And JDBC DAO IMPL, it will use default username schema DDL location. So it will have the DDLs. If you go inside this, okay, it's not showing here, but it is having the default DDLs. I'll show you the tables which those DDLs create. And I'm passing this auto-wired data source factory which I've created over here. So this will create object of simple data source factory because this is the only concrete implementing class for data source factory right now. And using this, I've set the username password. This was not the problem till Spring Boot version 3.0.0 and before Spring Boot version 3. I've never faced this issue, but with Spring Boot version 3, when I was implementing Spring JDBC, when I was upgrading this project, the application.properties was simply not working because it was not able to create the default users and authorities table, which you are going to see. That was the issue. If you try to manually create it, still it was not fitting in the use case and it was breaking. So the best solution, if you're using Spring Boot version 3.0.0 onwards, if you're using Spring Security JDBC based authentication and authorization, then you'll have to use this mechanism. You'll have to define a class for creating for configuring your H2 database rather than your property file. Okay. Now here, this is users again. I've created 2 users, and this time I'm creating object of JDBC user detail manager and adding the 2 users, and I'm returning this users. This will create 2 users. And if I want again bcrypt, let's say first I want plain text password so that I can show you how plain text password looks like in the memory. And let's say we have not added authorization so far, and we have ignored Spring Security onto our H2 so that we can access our H2. Let's try to start the application and log into the database.
Can we use auto-wired for the private variable that you have in data source.java?
I mean, you can experiment and see this one, right? Yeah, you can experiment and see, but after trying out a lot of things the entire 2 days, this code finally worked like this, what I've written right now, because property files was breaking in the latest version. And there is no solution for this on the Stack Overflow because it's the latest version. So this is the first solution which I have created.
But how did you find out the solution on this one?
Experimented, tried hundreds of things. That's the way it worked. I identified the issue. The issue I told you is like it's not able to, where is it? It's not able to create tables, the users and the other table which gets created in the latest version. So either there were multiple other things which you can try, but this was the best one which worked without any other issues. Okay, so we have created 2 users, Samarth as password as Samarth and has role store owner. Rohan has password as Rohan and a role as store clerk. Now we have not encrypted our password. So let's try to log into the H2. Okay. Why is it giving internal server error? I think let's see what's the problem. I think I have not properly restarted maybe. But before that, let me just confirm everything. Okay, let's try to restart now. You think I'll have to add these two properties? Okay, let's try to access again. Again, it's breaking. So I think we'll have to add these two properties. So this is what I've experimented and made it successful. I don't think this was also required. So we have commented out this one completely, uncommented this one. We did Spring security. Yeah, see, it's breaking again. So yeah, so this is the problem. So it's trying to read the properties from here if I give this. So I just need to avoid giving that. Otherwise application start fails. Let me try project clean. Otherwise we'll have to fall back to the previous version, 2.7 version. There we don't have this issue at all. 2.7.6. But I remember avoiding this issue, like fixing this issue using this same thing. Or worst case, what I can do is I can refer to the repo where I have added the fixed code here. So this one has the fixed code, the final fixed code. So yes, I have commented out above everything. And let's go here. Let's go to control. Let's go to where is it? Config JDBC. I believe it is as it is, but it was working here and not working here. Let me try to add authorization this time if it doesn't works. Or let's see if we are able to log in first. Okay, nothing is working, it seems. Login also broke. So H2 console properties, no qualifying bean for. So it's still trying to read the H2 from H2 properties. Let me see what can I disable this time. Let's say I disable this too. Oh, my bad. And I had added decrypt encryption. So instead of plain text, but I don't think that should be a problem at all. Let me check this file. It looks as it is. Get data source. Get data source. Okay. Now that application is again up and running. Try to log in. For a safer side, let's try to open it in a new session. What if it is having something cached in? Nothing. Okay. So we'll do one thing. What we'll do is we'll fall back to the previous version 2.7.2. Reason being this issue was fixed, but right now it's giving issue again. So let me add another one. 2.7.6. Let me check on my GitHub from previous versions, which I have built it using the same one. Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, seems my Git is taking time to load. This was a weird issue, unexpected one, which suddenly just occurred. Let me try one last thing here. So before I fall back to the previous version, let me try to add authentication, authorization both. Let me take this code to the final
Maybe
version.
during commenting and commenting, you might have.
Yeah, possibly. So this is again was required, and maybe just try project force update once. Maven update project force update and project clean after that. Let this finish. Check clean, and here I've commented out everything. Closed. Here I'm still on the latest version. Let's say not adding this, I'm adding the proper one. And here I'm encoding the password and saving the password. This is done correctly. This is done correctly. Let's say I'm also adding the authorization for now, just to test the application. And in the properties, I don't have anything here. Let's try to start it. Oh, maybe in build I did instead of start. Wait, let's cancel it. Okay, let's go to security. Security. Till here, we never had this issue in the till before 3 version. So this is that code. So which parent version it was? It was 2.5.6. Okay. And I've also built it with 2.7 something. So 2.7 here. Upgraded projects. Spring security 2.7.2. Till version 3, this issue is not there. Okay, Eclipse got hang. Let's wait for some time for this to resolve. Maybe I'll just restart the Eclipse.
So in real-time projects, we use JDBC authentication. I mean, through that.
Yes. In real time, we use JDBC based authentication, or we use JWT also sometimes. Okay, guys, so I just researched on this issue. It's a known issue. So found this forum which explains this issue. I hope everyone is back from the break. Is everyone back?
Yes.
So this is a resolution that they are recommending. Let's see, I'm using this, but I'm unable to open. So it's on the forum actually. Edit the H2. Security config. Whitelisting. And is Bix session chain. That is for JWT based one. Once each one is strange because the access was allowed in this. However, working editing the database is not possible through this. I can reproduce this. Still protected fix. Okay, so this is the one they are saying is a fix. So I think I've already added this, but somehow it was not getting picked. This. But what I have not done is CSRF, I believe. So let me check that. Or CSRF. Yes. So CSRF I'm disabling here. But still, even after adding authentication, authorization also, it is not working. So let me go back to the properties. I've added these three properties for the data.sql to work. I have added authorization, disabled this also. This is coming from HTTP security. Okay, so let's try with this bean, additional bean which I've added. So it's a known issue. If it doesn't works right now also, so we'll fall back to the previous. Oh, see, it worked. So we are now able to, okay, reach till here. I think something has went wrong. Yes, username, password. So I've set the password as admin. So we have fixed this issue, and the resolution for that issue was not this. This works with H2, I mean in memory. This doesn't works with JDBC. So for JDBC, you need to add this code and it will work.
Can you
This
make
will,
a font size bigger?
okay. So let me add a forum link also from where I found the solution. It's a known issue. So it's closed right now. I'll add a comment here. Found fix for making JDBC work. Security, Spring security, JDBC based. Okay, so here's the resolution. Let's test it with other things also. So H2 is working, but and also I don't want to add authorization. Let me see what happens if I enable, if I leave this over here, like without adding authorization. So I've again added DevTools. So it's auto restarting the application as soon as I save this file. So it has restarted. So let's try to log in again, first to H2. So we are able to log into H2. Okay, it's saying access denied now. It seems like we need to disable this CSRF. Without it, it doesn't work. So let me copy this. Let me copy this. I mean, copy this entirely, or maybe just copy this entirely. Comment this. How do we do till here itself? So let's do this. What else do we require? Okay, we require till here. Now let's see. Let's try to log in. Okay. So it's not working. If I add this instead of this, it should work. Basically, Spring Security, the latest one with latest Spring Boot is not that stable is what I can see. Because for making each and every piece work, I have to do so many things. Now this has worked. Now basic Spring Security is also working. Okay, oh God. So if you want to make Spring Security work, so you'll have to authenticate all requests, like authenticate everything. Whoever is authorize everything, whoever is authenticated, authorize them everything. And you can use this one. If you want proper authorization like you're setting the authorization, role-based authorization, then you'll have to use the below one. It's a little tricky, I know, but this is the fix for it. So this is how it is. Now I'll be committing this code, don't worry. So it has all the fix you require for the intermediate code, for the final code, everything. Okay, so is this clear to everyone how I fixed the code so far? So we have created two users, and Samarth has stored owner role, Rohan has stored clerk role. Now let's log into the database. So let's first authenticate ourselves. So the username and password now is Samarth. For Spring Security, we have Samarth user and Rohan user. So let's add Samarth here. We have logged, okay, it's saying, let me log out. Let's try to log in with Samarth. So we have successfully logged in. Let's go to H2 console. Let's log into H2 console. Now that we have implemented JDBC based security, we can see it is creating two extra tables for us. Users table, user has username and encrypted password. Since we have encrypted and stored our password with Bcrypt algorithm, so this is how the encrypted password looks like. Then we have another authorities table. Authorities has the role data, like Samarth has stored owner role, Rohan has stored clerk role. So because of these two tables, the entire issue has happened in the latest Spring Boot version. And because of these two tables, we have to now use the class way of configuring the H2 instead of the application.property from the latest version. Hopefully in the upcoming snapshot versions, they are going to fix this, provide a permanent fix for this. So right now you see it's basically hacks that we are doing for making the intermediate code work for the final code to work. So is it clear to everyone what we have done so far?
And
This is
to me, the filter chain is not really clear about the permitting. So you permit
one.
all.
Yes.
We disable CSRF.
Yes.
And
So we have
authorized
disabled
request.
authorization.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have disabled cross-site request forgery.
So we have no role matching for certain.
Yeah, only authentication right now.
On
So far.
authentication. Yeah. Okay.
If someone is authenticated, be it store owner, store clerk, he'll be able to access everything.
Yeah,
So far,
okay.
we have done this.
Mhm.
So it's mandatory that you have to define authorization in the latest version because of this database issue
Mhm.
and the way we are configuring the database. And we have encrypted and stored our password. So we see the encrypted password here. If we don't encrypt and store our password, we'll see the plain text password. So anybody having the database access will be able to then get the password. So let the application restart. It has restarted. I've added DevTools now, so it restarts very quickly. So if I go to users, you can see this is the plain text password. It's not a good practice to have plain text password. So that's why we are encrypting and storing our password so that even if somebody gets access to our database, they won't be able to know the password and they won't be able to hack into our system. Now we have encrypted and stored our password. This is it. Okay. If everyone is clear so far, you can write clear in the chat and we'll proceed to the next hands-on. This is also done actually, encrypting password. I know it was a little tricky because it's not because the Spring security is tricky. It's because in the latest version, they have not made it compatible. They have a lot of different issues. Till this version, Spring security is very stable, 2.7.6. In 3 version, it's not stable so far. I mean, in the very latest snapshot version, if they must have fixed, I'm not aware. But till 3.0.2 and 3.0.4, it is not that stable. Moving on to the last hands-on, configuring authorization for all APIs based on roles. So only store owner should be able to access all APIs. Store clerk should be able to access only check inventory, view inventory, and do checkout APIs. Then so basically we are going to add authorization now. We will verify our changes by logging in with different role-based users, then by testing the APIs using the Swagger UI. So let's go to JDBC, and in order to add authorization, we need to first uncomment this one. Now we are going to add proper authorization. And for proper authorization to work, we have seen that we need this pin. So this is a fix which we got from the Spring Security Forum. It gave us the link to a Stack Overflow page, which had this hack for the final authorization to work. I think it should, if it's working for the simple code, it should also work for this one. Let's try it out. If it gives error, then we'll use this one. So this code is basically used for ignoring Spring Security security mechanism onto the H2 console UI. So now that we have added this proper authorization here, filter chain, which has HTTP, we have disabled cross-site request forgery, and this is required from Spring Boot version 2 onwards. If you want to execute post APIs, if you have enabled by default, cross-site request forgery is enabled and you cannot execute your post APIs in Spring Boot. If you want to access your post APIs, you need to disable your cross-site request forgery. Then you would authorize the HTTP request. You authorize view financials and make announcement for the users who have store owner role. Currently only Samarth has store owner role. So Samarth will be able to view financials and make announcements and give discounts using this API. And we have authorized check inventory, view inventory, and do checkout to store owner as well as store clerk. So store owner will also be able to execute these 3 APIs as well as these 2 APIs, but store clerk will only be able to execute these 3 APIs. And then we are permitting the remaining APIs, whichever are the remaining APIs for everyone. Then we are adding a login form. So this is how we add authorization. We go from the like least restrictive to the most restrictive role. So least restrictive is store owner, he can access everything, and the most restrictive will be for store clerk. So we write it afterwards. This is the way we write this chain. Once we have written this, we just do http.build. Okay. Now that we have added this, it's time for us to test it. So let's first log out if we have any session open. So we don't have any session open. Let's log in with Samarth. Samarth is store owner, so he should be able to access all the APIs. So this is the default URL. Then let's go to Swagger UI. Let's try to view financials. Since I'm logged in with Samarth, I'm able to view financials. It seems like, guys, this is not really required. This one also works. It must be some caching issue before. Then checkout. Let's check out. Let's check if I can check the inventory with ID 1. It says true. So basically, as a store owner, since I'm logged in with Samarth, I can access all APIs. I can give a 100% discount. I can do checkout. I can view financials and then check inventory. I can do everything. Now let's say I log out from here. Now I'll log in basically. Okay, my bad. I'll log in basically now with store clerk role, which is Rohan. Rohan has store clerk role. So I'll log in with Rohan. Now I'm logged in with Rohan. Rohan has store clerk role, so he should not be able to view finances of the company. So if I execute this now, I'm logged in as Rohan. So the current principal is Rohan. Now I'm seeing this forbidden because I'm Rohan and I am store clerk and I don't have access to view financials of the company. I cannot even make discount announcement. So let's say today I try to make 100% discount announcement. It says 403 forbidden, because the current principal is Rohan. And we can see Rohan has store clerk role, and store clerk can only access these 3 APIs: check inventory, view inventory, and do checkout, and all the default APIs. But store clerk cannot access these 2 APIs because these 2 APIs are only accessible by store owner. So is this clear to everyone? How does authorization works? And we don't really need this one, but if you face issue with this snippet, you can try this snippet alternative. Let me write here. Alternative fix above filter chain also works. Okay. So is it clear to everyone what you've learned so far? Any questions? With this, we are done with Spring Security. So if no further questions, we can take a 15 minutes break. Then we'll start with MicroStream and Spring Boot AOP. Okay, thanks for the confirmation, Ratna. Let's start with the MicroStream. So what is MicroStream? MicroStream is a next level serialization framework. It allows us to store our Java object graphs directly into any file system or any targeted data store. Why MicroStream? Because Java is a predestined environment to realize high performance in-memory data processing. What does Java provides? Java provides a first-class native multi-model data structure, which is nothing but Java object graph. We can design our Java object graphs freely, adapt it seamlessly to our business requirements, use any Java type, use native multi-model data structure, use collections, array list, hash map, use object references, use circular references, use inheritance, use third-party libraries, which is not possible with Java serializable. If third-party library is not implementing serializable interface, we cannot serialize that Java object graph and store in the targeted data store or the file system. Only one data model, which is Java classes, Pojo classes. So we have the app which generates and stores the object graph in the memory, and this memory is part of the JVM, Java runtime. So what's the query language to search Java object graph, the objects which are in your heap? It's nothing but Java Streams API. Here's an example of Java Streams API. What about persistence? Okay, you must be saying, okay, you have the objects in graph, but I cannot just store everything, all the object graphs in the memory, right? Memory is RAM and RAM is limited. I need to store it to some hard disk. I need to store it somewhere else to a hard disk or to a targeted database, right? So for that, always in the traditional model, whenever you're using ORM like JPA, Hibernate, in that case, there is always a data conversion layer. And this is what I was talking about, the data conversion layer. For that data conversion to happen, we need to provide this dialect. So we need to tell JPA that, okay, you're talking with H2 database, you're talking with MySQL database, or you're talking with Postgres database. Depending upon dialect, it comes to know it's communicating with which database, and as per that database, like as per that database language, it will convert your object graph so that it will be compatible to be stored into that particular targeted data store. If you're storing your object graph into MySQL, it will require MySQL dialect. If you're storing your object graph into Postgres, it would require Postgres dialect, because as per that dialect, it will do the conversion and store that object graph in a tabular format in your Postgres database. So challenge is storing objects into tables, JSON, key value store, graph, all requires data conversion. And data conversion through every single read and write. So it requires data conversion for every single read and write. So this data conversion requires a lot of CPU power. It reduces the performance. It has expensive latencies. It has a complex architecture, and it has expensive development process. Inefficient concept requires expensive cluster infrastructure. It increases the cost of infrastructure. So having a MySQL database and this conversion, which requires, it uses a lot of compute, so it increases the cost of infrastructure. Now you must be saying, in order to reduce the cost, the computation cost of reading and writing from the database, the IO cost, I can use a local cache. So even reading through local cache requires this data conversion layer. That doesn't eliminate this data conversion layer. So NoSQL database structure, even object-oriented databases, graph databases, all are incompatible with native Java object graph, because you cannot directly dump this object graph into any targeted data store directly. So this is called as impedance mismatch. So you cannot directly dump this object graph over here with the traditional ORMs that we have, but you can dump this object graph into your targeted file store or targeted data store, be it database or your local file system or your block storage, cloud block storage. You can do this with you by using MicroStream. So MicroStream is the only framework in the market which allows you to dump your object graph directly into your targeted data store. So you take these object graph, which is nothing but binary data, and you dump this binary data without converting this binary data into your targeted data store. This is called as system prevalence. So various weaknesses and challenges with system prevalences are snapshot time, snapshot size, long system restore time after restart, not suitable for microservices, risk of losing data between snapshot, max database size, less than RAM size. Even if you're thinking of dumping directly or the binaries into your database and loading all the binaries, so you will face this issue. Your database size is larger than your RAM, but you don't have sufficient RAM to load all the data back to your RAM, right? As object graph directly, you cannot load all the data again into, even if you dump this object graph somewhere, you cannot directly load everything because RAM is limited. Big RAM size will be required, extreme huge traffic, high infrastructure cost, garbage collection issues lead to latencies, class changes, evolution, Java serialization, limitations and issues. So you'll face all these issues. So MicroStream eliminates these weaknesses. It eliminates the system prevalence concept. How? Because MicroStream is a library which you can use in your Java applications. It directly dumps these object graph into targeted data store. So as part of this demo, I'm going to show how you can store your object graph directly into your local file system. So I'm going to store the object graphs into this particular location on this laptop. I'll show you this location. It's in the users folder. And since it eliminates the conversion, it makes the architecture simple. It has faster time to market, saves a lot of vCPU power, minimizes latencies, in-memory queries executed in microseconds, saves up to 92% cost of infrastructure. So this is what MicroStream does. It dumps the object graph back to the, it takes the object graphs and dumps into targeted data store and does a batch loading of that, or the lazy loading of a particular subgraph of a particular object graph, so that you can efficiently utilize your RAM and utilize and have the in-memory querying capability. And for in-memory query, we can see it's executed in microseconds. So it solves the system prevalence problem, because it allows you to load a subgraph of the object graph, the binary which you have dumped into your targeted data store. This is one of the repo. So you can refer to this repo, MicroStream 1 GitLab repo, or you can also refer to my GitLab repo where I'm putting this project for getting started. Then you can refer the official documentation. Any questions so far? Okay. Now let's move to the next one. Where can MicroStream run? MicroStream is a Java library, so it can run wherever Java can run. Java runs on your desktops, on your laptops, on your on-premise servers, on cloud, on in Docker containers, on native crawl VM native images, on various, like it can run wherever Java can run. So you can run it in a microservice that you built using any Java framework, be it Spring Boot or any other framework. It can run in your Android applications, wherever JDK 8 is installed, it can run. So for MicroStream, you can use any JVM technology. You can use Java, you can use GraalVM, Kotlin, Scala, Scooby, Conjure, Android. What's the data model? Nothing but a POJO class, no fancy entity classes. It's a simple Java POJO class, customer class here. So data model is Java classes only, no dependencies, just use POJO. No need for special superclasses, interfaces, or annotations. Use existing classes as they are, no strings attached. Design your object model freely without any limitation. Any Java types are supported because you can build any class. You have that freedom. Use any types from third-party APIs. Basically, import any libraries and use that library classes as basically as your fields. Use inheritance. Using inheritance will also becomes trouble-free. Migrating to MicroStream is also trouble-free. What about persisting objects? This is a sample code how you can persist a particular customer object into MicroStream storage. And I'm also going to give you a proper code of doing the same, which I've created for the Spring Boot application. So store any single object or subgraph explicitly. It's your choice. You have complete freedom. Binary data format, no expensive mapping, append only log strategy, custom tailored type handling for best performance. Store any Java type, be it your custom class like customer or any string or simple integer. Any suited type is supported. Atomic operations and ACID transactions safe. Multi-threaded write ops for max performance. Replaces 3 CRUD operations, create, update, and delete. Using inheritance is trouble-free. Store consistency, like strong consistency, and storage consistency is also there. Gigantic data throughput, that all I have seen, and I will demonstrate that. So here you can see you can concurrently write to different channels. So if you want concurrency of your write operations to be 2, there is a property you can define that write channel property to 2. Then you can do concurrent writes. Loading objects dynamically into RAM. What does it means by loading objects dynamically into RAM? It means you have lazy loading. So I've defined orders as lazy over here. This means that when I'm fetching the customer details, it will not fetch the order details. It will fetch the other attributes here for which I have not defined lazy. And when I do this get orders, that time actually it will go and it will perform a transaction. It will fetch me the order details from my targeted data store, be it any database or local file system. And it will load that orders detail, which is a subgraph of customer object graph, into the RAM or into the memory. So if you're using MicroStream, it's recommended that we recommend you that you use lazy reference as much as possible, because then you can sufficiently utilize your RAM. So you'll have sufficient RAM available. Restore the entire object graph if you have sufficient RAM, or just load the subgraph when required. No inconvenient object copies. Multi-threaded read ops for max performance. RAM is limited, so load single objects or subgraphs on demand. No more classic select, simply call getter. Gigantic data throughput. Loaded objects are merged into the object graphs automatically. You don't have to do anything. Minimizes expensive IO ops. Memory management. What about memory management? Memory is fully managed by JVM. So whatever object graphs are loaded into your memory, you don't have to clean it up. Use lazy references wherever possible. Clear your lazy references which are not used anymore. There is a clear for that. There is a .clear method for that. In case of garbage collection issues, you can try Azul VM. So on the left hand side, you can see database server paradigm. So here, this is JPA or any ORM. So this always requires a conversion layer. So this JPA is nothing but a conversion layer. It's converting the object graph into database suitable data and then storing it into database. But here, when you are using pure Java in-memory computing paradigm shift, which is you are using MicroStream, you don't need to convert this. It's just a simple library which will directly pick your object graph and dump it into any targeted data store and retrieve it. Retrieve a sub part of it or entirely as per your RAM, how much RAM you have. You can load certain part or you can load the entire data. So that will depend upon your application design and the underlying infrastructure that you have provisioned. If you want to learn MicroStream, these are the links for getting started. I'm sharing these links over chat. Okay, that's about the PPT. Now I'll start with the application. So this is the application. It has a POM file. Here I'm using the latest version of Spring Boot, which is 3.0.2. and the compatible latest version of MicroStream, which is 08.00.00 MSEA2. And I've added the two dependencies, MicroStream storage embedded configuration. In order to enable MicroStream, you need to add these two dependencies in your POM file. Then I've added the web dependency, DevTools dependency, Lombok test, and Swagger dependency using Spring Doc. I've enabled Swagger. This is the base package. This is the normal looking main class. This is the controller where I've created these APIs, store all, add, find all. So the store all will store all the students. This will store one student, find all will get all the students from the MicroStream storage. Find by first name will get me students with that first name. Find by last name will get me students with that last name. And delete all will delete all the students which are stored in the MicroStream repository. Where have I configured the MicroStream configuration? I've configured in the repository package in the student repository IMPL method. This is just a plain interface. And here you can see I'm providing a concrete implementation for this interface. This is the code. Use it as it is to configure the MicroStream. Here we are giving the path location of our MicroStream storage. Currently it's my local directory. So let me open this. Let's go to C drive, users, Divya, and the folder name is, let's see the folder name. And the folder name is MicroStream Spring CRUD store. So MicroStream Spring CRUD store. So this is the folder. By default, it has one channel. There is another property which you can add to increase the channels for concurrent read writes. So I've just used a default channel 0. And this is where it's dumping the binary data. You cannot read it directly here. If you want to read this data, you need to run your Spring Boot application or your Java application and load it back to your JVM. And in your JVM only, once your object graph is loaded, then only you can query it. So you cannot read this binary data from here. With the traditional database approach, you have a IDE where you have your query language, SQL query language, which you can write and query the data. If you're using MicroStream, it's meant for Java-based querying, like using Streams API for querying. So you will not have any MicroStream IDE or UI. It's just a library. So it's dumping the binaries, and you have to load back the binaries. When you start the application, it will load back the binaries. And once it has loaded the binaries back to the RAM, then you can query it by using Streams API. Let me show you how. Okay. So here I've defined a list of students. This is embedded storage manager. This is coming from the MicroStream package. And this is the location. This is some boilerplate code which you'll have to add to configure the MicroStream storage. You can refer this documentation if you want to deep dive. All I'll say is define your custom data type here. So my custom data type is student, and I'm storing students into this path. The binaries of students, I'm dumping it here. I've created array list of students here, and then it's just a boilerplate, just give the reference here, that's all. Once you've done this part, you have to pass the location. So just give the proper location over here. And this, I'm setting this value to this variable using this syntax. This @ value basically reads the key and assign the key's value to your variable. Then store all. What is store all doing? Once I have configured the storage, I'm using storage.store. So what I'm doing is I'm taking these students and I'm adding all the students to this array list. Then I'm syncing this array list back to the storage. So for everything, for store all, for store, we just need to add the additional student or students, like array list or a single student, into this array list and sync this list. So we are syncing the object graph which is in my memory to which is in my file system. So this is how you sync. Using this line, you sync your object graph which is in your JVM memory to the binaries which is dumped here. So this method syncs it. For find all, I'm simply returning the array list students because it's already in sync with the binaries in my file system, local file system. And find by first name, I'm again just use this, since this list is already in sync, I'm just using stream API and filtering and getting the student with this first name and returning the all students with this first name. Same goes for last name. I'm streaming the students list and using stream API, I'm filtering the student with these last name. All the students who have this last name will be returned as a list of student. And delete all is simply I'm clearing this array list, removing all the students and syncing an empty array list with the MicroStream. Using the store all, I'm syncing the empty array list. I've defined the store all over here. So the same method, I'm simply passing the empty array list to store all. And by passing the empty array list to the store all, I'm syncing an empty array list. If I sync an empty array list, what it will do is, if you sync an empty array list, it will delete everything you have stored. It will delete all the binary data which you have stored in your targeted data store. Now I've wrapped all these methods by APIs. So I've auto-wired the student repository here. And using the student repository reference, I'm calling all the methods: store all, add, find all, find by first name, last name, delete all. Now let me give you application walkthrough, functional walkthrough. This was the code walkthrough. So the application has started. Let's go to localhost Swagger. Let's say I want to see if there is any student, so I can use the find all. So I don't have any student, so it's returning me empty list. If I want to store some students, we need to pass a JSON array. So let's say student number 1, name Sam, Narula. Student number 2, name Sahil, last name Shah. Execute. So I've inserted 2 students. We can see the curl command. This is coming from API documentation. It has returned all data stored. So it has dumped the binaries of these 2 students over here. Now, how do I retrieve it? I'll use the find all method. So it's returning all the students that we have. Find by first name, Sam. I've got Sam. Find by last name, Narula. And it's returning Sam Narula. Then if you want to delete, if you want to add a single student, you can add a single student here. Say 3. Let's say David David Connick. So I've added David Connick. I can find all students. So David Connick is here. One more thing. In JPA, you have validations, right? You cannot insert 2 students with same ID. But in MicroStream, there is no validation. That means that I can insert another David with same data. So if I execute this, you see I have 2 Davids now. There is no validation here. If you want to add validation, you'll have to write the Java code for adding that validation. And you'll have to add that Java code here. While adding the students, you'll have to check in your array list if you have that student. If you don't have that student, then you add that student. So you'll have to write the validation logic. Now, if you want to delete all, you can click delete all. This will sync an empty array list. So it is returned all data deleted. Now, if I do find all, I'll not get anything because I've deleted everything. So this is about MicroStream. Is it clear to everyone? If it's clear,
I have a question.
go ahead.
What about as you said, you have to check for yourself the equivalent of the primary key.
Correct.
That you have in a database. You have to check for that. What if your list is very, very huge?
Then you have to do batch loading and check it.
Okay. So you can do a batch loading and
yeah, you can create your student class in a way where everything else is lazy first name lazy. You just load the numbers and you check against the number.
I can only load the numbers.
Yeah, the numbers won't
if
take
I
that
do
much space.
if I make the other attributes lazy,
Yeah.
Okay, so and then maybe I have to think about the collection I use. So maybe a list is not the best option if I.
Yeah, that's your choice. I mean, however
Yeah.
you wish to design, you have full flexibility and freedom.
Okay.
Also, I
Because
think
I'm
batch
thinking,
loading
I don't know if it's a little bit slow then if I have to check everything I have stored.
correct.
So
You'll have
maybe
to
if I
design
have
it smartly.
20,000 students, this will be more a problem compared to a relational database.
That's right. So you'll have to design your model classes with
Yeah.
lazy references as much as possible. And
Yeah.
there is also batch loading of subgraph possible. I've not tried that out, but that's possible. So you'll have to read the document and try that out, where you batch load, let's say 5,000 students into RAM, only the numbers, maybe 1 to 5,000. You check whether your number exists that way, like just do the batch loading.
Okay.
And concurrent writes and reads are also possible. So you'll have to see how distributed read can be performed.
Yeah.
You can combine it with something like Spark or something and, try to do a distributed read.
Yeah.
You'll have to experiment and see. I think a lot of things are there on the official doc. You can first refer that. But if you don't find something, then you can create a custom solution. Okay, any other questions? Okay, no further questions. If everyone is clear with MicroStream, you can write clear in the chat, and I'll proceed with the next course, which is Spring Boot AOP. Okay, perfect. Let's start with Spring Boot AOP. So this is the curriculum. We'll first start with the introduction, then we'll implement AOP. So what is aspect-oriented programming? In order to understand what is aspect-oriented programming, what is AOP basically? AOP stands for aspect-oriented programming. So aspect-oriented programming deals with aspects. Aspect is nothing but a class which contains the cross-cutting concern logic. And the methods inside the aspect class are called as advice. And those advice has the actual cross-cutting concern logic. This will become more clear as we go through different sections, different topics of this course. Let's understand the terminology such as aspect. Aspect is a class which has the cross-cutting concern logic. Now, what is cross-cutting concern logic? This is also a question like some of you might have. So logging is called as cross-cutting concern logic. Transaction management is called as cross-cutting concern logic. Auditing is called as cross-cutting concern logic. API rate limiting is called as cross-cutting concern logic. So these all things are called as cross-cutting concern logic, which is not actually part of your business logic, but it has to be made part of your business logic. So you can separate out these things into a separate classes using AOP. So this will become clear. I'll demonstrate the use case of logging and auditing. So let's understand the terms such as aspect. Aspect is a class which has the cross-cutting concern logic. Advice is the method inside the aspect class which is having the real cross-cutting concern implementation code. For logging, we can say it is the code for logging logic, or we can say it is the method inside aspect class which has a logging logic for particular business method. Then we have point cut. Point cut is kind of an expression. This helps in selecting the business logic method or class where you want to apply your join point. And join point is the actual place in the code where cross-cutting concern can be applied, or we can say it's a combination of point cut and advice. So it's the bridge between point cut and advice. Okay. So this was about the terminologies. You can read through this. Even if you don't understand, that's fine. I'll give you a 5 minutes break to read this. And after the break, we'll start with the hands-on, the walkthrough and the everything, all the other topics. Don't worry too much even if you don't understand this now. This will become clear as we go through different topics, the hands-on, because we understand much better by the practicals rather than by theory, right? So this through practicals, it will become clear. Each and every concept will become clear. Mohammed, for the attendance certificate, I'm not sure. I don't think there is any certificate for this course. This is just for the knowledge purpose. But if you want to have certifications, I've given my Udemy course links. You can just attend that and that would give you one certificate. But this is just for the knowledge purpose. Okay guys, let's start with the hands-on walkthrough of the provided employee management system. So as part of this hands-on, I'll give you code walkthrough and functionality walkthrough. So this is the application, Spring Boot AOP. We are using the latest version of Spring Boot. 1 minute, just let me share. Okay, I'm sharing again. Mohammed, you can save these links. It's a big message which has all the links. Okay, so we are using the latest version of Spring Boot, which is 3.0.2. We have added these dependencies: JPA, Web, DevTools, H2, Lombok, and Swagger dependency. So for AOP, we don't need to add any special dependency. AOP is part of the Spring Boot parent itself. This is the main directory. This is the resource directory. In main directory, this is the base package, and these are all the sub packages. This is a simple looking main class. We have the aspect config. We're going to comment and uncomment these advice methods as we'll go through different topics. Since it's an aspect class, it's been annotated with @configuration and @aspect. And for logging, we have used Lombok annotation @slf4j. This is the audit controller, which will uncomment when we come to this section. And this is the employee controller, and this is the entity classes. We have the employee entity class. It's a JPA entity class. So this gets mapped to employee table in the H2 database, and employee table will have ID and name column. This is the audit log entity class again. So it will get mapped to an audit log table. It will have ID column, create date column, description column. Then we have audit repository. 1 minute. Then we have audit repository, which will be used for performing CRUD operations to audit log table. Then we have another JPA repository, employee repository, and this will be used for performing CRUD operations onto employee table. Then we have employee service. It's an interface, and this is the concrete implementing classes. Concrete implementing class, basically employee service IMPL. It's a service class, so annotated with @service. It implements employee service and provides concrete implementation for these methods. Here we have auto-wired employee repository. We are adding employee using JPA method save and flush. For updating employee, we are checking whether employee exists by ID. If the employee exists, then we update it. If it doesn't exist, if someone tries to exploit our functionality, we throw an runtime exception saying there is no employee with the provided ID. Basically, you can imagine a hacker trying to exploit your API, trying to add a new employee by using update employee API because he's aware that you're using JPA, and in JPA for updating and for saving, there is the same method, save and flush. So he tries to exploit. So if you have not added this, he'll be successful in exploiting your application. So if you add this, he will fail in exploiting your application if you add this logic. Then get employee by ID. So you can find employee by ID and it will return optional employee. Delete employee by ID. You can use the JPA method delete by ID. And here we have auto-wired the employee service interface. It will create the concrete implementing class at runtime. Then we are using the add employee method, passing the employee. It will add the employee. Then we return employee added. Similarly, we have wrapped all the methods, and this is add employee, update employee, get employee by ID, delete employee by ID. So we have wrapped all the methods and we are returning the responses. This is the H2 configuration. We have configured H2 and the database name is employee.db. Let's start the application. Okay. Let's see why the application start is failing. Is it really failing? No. Okay, Jakarta Bean. So this is a problem which we get in the latest version, and in order to fix it, we need to add these annotations. So with JPA, we need these two. I have not added these two. That's why it was giving issue in AOP project.
Is that because of Spring Boot doesn't have any default validation implementation?
Correct. In the latest version.
The latest version. All right.
Yeah, they should have added it transitively with the JPA, but they have not.
Yeah, in the past it was
Might
always
be there.
Yeah, Jakarta or JE.
I don't know why they removed it, but yes, that's
Mm.
how it is. So we have to manually add it. It should
Okay.
ideally come transitively. Each new major version, it's always a challenge to figure out what is changed and to fix your applications when you migrate.
Yes, because it's so much, right? The
Exactly.
changes.
Yeah. Okay, so now what we have done is we've added this, and application start has passed. It's running on which port? 8080. Let's access this URL again. I mean, this URL again. 1 minute. I think it's not loading up. Yeah, now it's loading. So we can add the employee. We have H2 database. We all know now how to access H2 database. Let's say we are adding an employee with name Samarth Narula. Employee added. Get employee by ID. We know there is an employee with ID 1. So we can get Samarth Narula. Update employee by ID. Let's say we try to update a non-existing employee and we try to insert one Sahil with ID 2. So it will throw a runtime exception because we have handled this. So it's throwing a runtime exception. There is no employee with ID 1. If we try to update ID, employee with ID 1, we have employee with ID 1 as Samarth Narula. Now we can change it to Sam, and this will work because we had an employee with ID 1. If we want to delete a particular employee, we can delete him by ID. So we have deleted the current employee. So, and this is the employee entity class. So this is how, this is the functionality of this application. Is the functionality clear? What is the functionality? It's just like adding employees, updating employees, get employee by ID, delete employee by ID.
So using this JPA method, does it mean it's an AOP application or AOP?
Not yet.
Or it
We
has
have
more
not,
to it?
we have not even started with AOP. This is a normal
Okay.
application right now. AOP is part of Spring Framework, but we have not implemented AOP. This was just the application, normal application walkthrough. Now we'll start implementing AOP slowly, as we'll go through these topics. So far, is the basic functionality of these application, like this application, clear? We don't have AOP anywhere implemented. It's all commented out right now. All the methods are commented out. And you can ignore this because this is the runtime exception which we have thrown if somebody tries to exploit our application. I purposely added it because I'll cover an auditing use case for this, for catching such scenarios. Okay, let's configure audit table and repository. So we have already added an audit log table and we have added an audit log repository. Let's also create the controller for it and keep it in advance. We have dev tools, so it's restarting the application. We don't need to manually stop and start. And dev tools has restarted now. So let's refresh. So we have audit logs, which will return me all the rows from the audit log table. Right now, we don't have anything. We'll publish things to this table, audit log table, when we'll go through different topics. Let's understand what are types of advices in Spring Boot AOP. So these are the types of advice. We have the before advice. This advice runs before the selected method is executed. Now, which are your business logic methods here? So these are your business logic methods here. Add employee is a business logic method. Update employee is a business logic method. And so are these your business logic methods. So by using before advice, we can run the selected, this advice runs before the selected method is executed. That means if you want to run something before execution of this method or all these methods in this class, you can basically use before advice and it will do something and then it will run these methods. Similarly, we have after advice. After advice runs after the successful, after the selected, like this runs after the selected method is executed. For this advice, it does not matter if your method is returning a value or throwing an exception. That means after advice will always run. If you are implementing a after advice, it will always run after your business logic method execution, whether your business logic method has successfully executed or thrown an exception, whether it's successfully executed or unsuccessfully executed. It will always run after the execution of your business logic method. So what is a successful execution? For update employee, if it returns, if it adds the employee, it's a successful execution. If it throws an exception, it's an unsuccessful execution for the update employee method. So after, if you're implementing update after advice, it will always run, no matter whether it's storing an employee or it's throwing an exception, it will always run. Then we have after returning. This advice runs only on successful execution of the selected method. So if you're selecting this method by using point cut expression, we'll come to the point cut expression later on. So if you're using after returning, it will only run if it's going in the positive scenario, if it's adding an employee. Similarly, after throwing will always run only after unsuccessful execution of your selected method. If this is your selected method, and if it's throwing an exception, then your after throwing advice will be executed. If it's passing, it will not be executed. That's the difference between after advice, after returning advice, and after throwing advice. Then there is something called as around advice. This advice runs before and after the successful execution of the selected method. Read this very carefully. After the successful execution, that means around is a combination of before advice and after returning advice. So you don't have any particular advice which is combination of before and after throwing. So around is a combination of before advice and after returning advice, because this advice runs before your business logic method is executed and after the successful execution of your business logic method. But if your business logic method is unsuccessful, it will only run before. It will not run after. Okay. So that's about the advices. Now let's create an aspect config class with before advice method. So we have placed the config class in the config package. This is the config class. Here we are auto wiring both the JPA repositories, audit repository, employee repository, and this is the before advice. So this is the point cut expression. So we write here expression, and this is the format: access modifier public, return type wildcard character asterisk, means it can be anything. Package name is what? It's com.example.aop.spring service IMP. We are selecting this package, and this star means any class inside this package. So you see package name dot class name, asterisk means all classes inside this package, dot star means method name, star for method name means all methods inside employee service IMPL, and this like circular bracket with dot dot circular bracket close means these methods can have any number of arguments. These methods can have any number of arguments. That's the meaning of this. So has everyone understood the point cut expression, how to read it?
So execution is the keyword.
Yes. Then this is the format. So the format is access modifier, return type, package name, dot class name, dot method. Wherever you use asterisk, if you use asterisk here, it means all classes inside this package. If you use asterisk here, it means all methods inside this class. If you use dot dot here like this, it means these methods can have any number of arguments.
So this is of type before advice.
Yes, this is before advice. So we have defined the advice with this before annotation. This is a advice annotation, AOP annotation. And this is the point cut expression. And this entire thing is called as advice. This method is called as advice method.
And we can have only one of these, right? Combination.
No, we can have all.
For this advice, we can have either before, after, one
No,
of
we
them,
can
right?
mix everything as we like.
Oh, okay.
You can break things, you can make things. It's all like how you want to design.
But
It's
will it
used
not
for
conflict
creating.
if we use multiple ones?
Both
here?
will get executed.
Okay.
I'll show you that when we'll come to around advice. Okay. So now that we have added this, now what will happen if what I have done here, let me explain you. Okay, log before all methods. So what I'm doing is I'm logging the method name started. If I execute add employee, it will execute this method. If this method is executed, it will print add employee started, because I've selected this method, all methods in this class. So any method is if any method is executed from this class, it will print that method name started. Let me demonstrate this quickly. Let's say I add an employee, adding an employee with ID 1, name Sam. So I've added the employee, it will say employee added. It has logged employee added. So I've not added this logging logic here, right? Without AOP, how you'll have to do is you'll have to write it over here. This is how you'll do it, right? If you're doing it
Right.
normally. But imagine writing it for every method. If you have hundreds of methods, writing it for every method. This is how painful it will be. Tomorrow, if you add more methods, you'll have to add this additional line. So this is called as cross-cutting concern. And this cross-cutting concern can be separated out by using AOP. So I've added it here using this join point, which is a bridge between my point cut and my business logic method. So using this join point, I'm getting the name of my business logic method and I'm printing started. Now, similarly, I can implement after advice. It will be executed after any method execution in this class. So if any method is executed in this class, be it successful execution or unsuccessful execution, after is always executed. So where is it here? So after is always executed. So it will print message method name ended. Let's experiment with this. Let's again add the employee Sam because we are using embedded database H2. So all the data persisted in the database is lost on application start. And as soon as we save the file, we are using H2. So it has restarted the application. Since we have added an employee now, let's try to update a non-existing employee first. So after is always executed, right? Let's say we are trying to insert another employee or trying to exploit the functionality. So let's say we are giving the name Sahil and ID 2. We're trying to exploit, it is giving exception that there is no employee with ID 2. That means you're trying to update a non-existing employee. Let's see if after advice has, okay, so you can see here, after advice has always executed. It has returned update employee ended. So it is coming from here. Let's do one thing. It's getting a little confusing. Let's clear the log. Let's try to execute this again. Let's see now. Okay, you see, it has again printed. That means after advice is executed, no matter whether your business logic method has successfully executed or unsuccessfully executed, means whether it has returned something or done what it's supposed to do, or whether it has thrown an error. After is always executed. So is this clear? After is always executed. Even if our method throwed an exception, still after advice was executed. And we can see update employee ended. And started is coming from before advice.
Kind of after is kind of finally block in exception handling, isn't it?
Yes, always executed.
And can we also put like print details there, like of which employee added and what was?
We can do anything, like we'll have to get using this join point. I've done it below. You'll have to get the
Okay.
argument, and from that you can do it. You can refer the code from here. I'll come to this. This I'll demonstrate in the auditing.
And what is join point actually? Can you please repeat that again?
Yeah, join point is the basically bridge between your point cut expression. Like it's we are using here to get the business logic method name. See,
It's
get
a
signature
standard.
is, yeah. So let me show you here the definition wise. Basically, it's used for getting the method name and the method arguments. So theoretically it's a place in the code where cross-cutting concern can be applied, or we can say it's a combination of point cut and advice. It's basically allowing you to get the details of the selected business logic methods, which is currently under execution, because of which this advice is getting executed.
And these method names are a standard, or those are user defined, log before and all?
Which one?
The log before, log after, all methods, these things.
These ones.
These are user ones, public void 38 line number.
Okay, this is the format. So I have defined it public void here. So you can write, you can
This
return
is
also
user
anything.
defined method, right?
Yes, yes, I have defined it. You can define anything and select anything, do anything after that. Logging is one thing. Let's say before these employees are added, removed, or anything, you want to check something, okay, whether that that employee to be added has done the verification or not. So here you can call the verification service, and in the verification database, you can check whether that employee was verified before joining your organization, or before his entry being added to the employee database. Does that answers your question?
So kind of prerequisite, if it is anything, we can also check that using this before.
Yes, we can do anything using before. Before is basically meant for doing something before execution of your business logic method. Right now, using this point cut expression, we have selected all the methods inside this class. So you just need to understand, like this point cut access modifier, we have selected public. Return type can be anything. Package name is this package name, and for class name we are saying all classes inside this package name and all methods inside this class name, and these methods can have variable number of arguments. This is how you read it.
Yeah, so for implementing AOP, we have to have this aspect config.java in our
correct
project.
You can name this class anything you like, but you need to annotate with these two annotations. Sometimes this annotation is not mandatory, but this one is @configuration. Okay, so I mean, with the as the version keeps changing, they make things non-mandatory, mandatory that way. Okay, now let's see after advice. So now we have seen before advice, we have seen, sorry, after advice also we have seen. We have done this, we have created after advice. Now let's see around advice. Let's create a around advice method to log around. Log means around means before and after all business logic method executions. So this around will be executed before and after successful execution of the business logic method. So here we are not using join point, we are using proceeding join point. Again, we have selected all the methods in employee service IMPL class. Check the point code, it's the same. And we are saying, let's say employee, add employee started. Then when we do this proceed, that time this add employee gets executed. Once this add employee has got executed, then we are logging add employee ended. If the add employee fails for some reason, it will not print this add employee ended. It will terminate from here. So this proceed is the line where your business logic method, selected business logic method, gets executed. So you're halting the business logic method execution, doing whatever you want to do before, then executing your business logic method. And once your business logic method is successfully executed, then doing something else. That is how this is working. Let me demonstrate. I'm clearing the logs so that we can clearly see the logs. Let's say add employee. Again, I'm adding an employee with name Sam. I've added an employee, and I can see here add employee started, add employee ended. So around is getting executed before my business logic method execution, then it's executing my business logic when I do this proceed, and then it's printing whatever I want to do after my business logic method execution. So this is the line which is executing this method. So whenever request comes, AOP intercepts the request, first does this. When we write this line, that time it actually executes our selected business logic method. And after that, it does whatever we are instructing it to do. So here I'm instructing to log business logic method ended. One more thing, if my code will throw exception, so it will execute this before one, but when I'll proceed, let's say for update employee, I'll try to update a non-existing employee. So if I try to add a non-existing employee, it will throw an exception. If it will throw an exception, it will print this, but on this line it will break. So it will not print this. So let's try to update a non-existing employee. So here we can see we have thrown an exception. The application has thrown an exception because we tried to exploit the application. And here we can see update employee started, and then it will execute. So here it's executing and throwing runtime exception, and it is not printing update employee ended, because around advice is a combination of before advice and after returning advice, and after returning advice is executed only after successful execution of your business logic method, and it's not executed if your business logic method is throwing any exception. If you want your advice to be executed when your business logic method throws some exception, then you need to use after throwing advice. Is this clear to everyone?
You modify, update valid employee, it will be executed, right? Ended.
Yes, it will be executed. So let's say currently I have added this employee. I think it's already added. Employee is added. Now, if I try to update Sam to Samarth, so it is executed here successfully. If my business logic method is executing successfully, here also we can see we executed add employee, so add employee started, add employee ended, update employee started, update employee ended. It's coming from around advice. Is it clear to everyone? If it's clear, you can write clear in the chat. If you have any questions, you can ask. What about others?
Apart from, I mean, here logging, where else, I mean, what are the practical scenarios where AOP is used?
Auditing, transaction management, rate limiting, and many more. Whatever cross-cutting concerns logic are there, there it can be executed. There it can be implemented basically.
But even auditing and all those, that means giving an additional information only, right? I mean, printing or doing something, or maybe
No, not printing. You can add
no,
it to
it's not about
database.
actually. It could be anything, prerequisite or any, right?
Exactly. So it's an interceptor design pattern. If you see in terms of microservice design patterns, then we have after returning. This is executed on successful execution of the business logic method. So I've written here add employee. So if my add employee is successfully executing, then it will be basically this will be executed. Whenever a new employee is added, I want to add a entry in the audit log table that details of the employee which was added to the employee table. Okay, it can be any details. Right now I'm just adding the employee detail, but you can also add, okay, I'm adding the date also when this employee was added in the employee table. So that if somebody messes up with the employee database, we can always compare the date data which is there in the audit log table and the employee table. If somebody tries to change their starting date in the employee database just to mock around and say, okay, I'm in this company from 5 years, so you can track these kind of things by adding additional entries. So what this will do is whenever anybody executes add employee, it will add an entry that this employee was added in the employee table into the audit log table and with the date when he was added with the current timestamp. So let me execute this. So let's say Samarth is getting added to the employee. Okay, sorry, not this. Add employee. So Samarth Narula has got added. So I can check the audit log table. I can see that Samarth was added on this state this time. Okay, so that's about the auditing. Is the auditing clear to everyone? How we have done auditing by using AOP?
What is this join point get args zero build?
Okay, this is we are getting the argument details, employee details. So this object we are getting, 1 minute. This object we are getting here. We are getting the employee object. Details of the employee added, right? So here we can see it's the employee object. We're getting the employee object. Using join point is a bridge between the business logic method, right? So using this get args, we are getting the business logic method add employee arguments. What is the add employee argument? It's employee. So we're getting the employee which was passed to this method, add employee method. We are getting this employee which was passed to this method
Okay.
over here. And we are adding this description and we are saving this into the database. Similarly, if we want to audit events when somebody tries to exploit our application API, let's say somebody tries to update a non-existing employee. So I've created this after throwing, which gets executed if somebody tries to exploit the update employee API and tries to add an employee which does not exist. So this again, this thing, same thing which I've done here in 1 line, I've done in 2 lines here. I've got the employee detail out and I've casted it to employee to save it into employee. Then I've saved the entry error while updating employee since there is no employee with ID, and I've saved the employee ID. Here I had saved the complete employee, right, object, but here I'm saving just the ID. So let's try this out. Let's say somebody tries to exploit the application. So update employee. Let's say somebody tries to update a non-existing employee and we have audited this details. It's coming in the audit log table. Here I'm simply fetching the audit log details. So you can see error while updating employee since there is no employee with ID 7. We can check the same by going to H2 database also. We'll have to log into the H2 because here we are simply reading from H2 database. We have wrapped this JPA method. There's no password. So here is the details. Is this clear to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so if you have any doubts, you can ask because with this we have done with the entire AOP. David, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll get your query resolved by communicating with the JavaPro guys.
That's nice, but I'm not on LinkedIn.
Oh, you're okay.
I'm
I'll
on-
share my mail ID with you in private.
Yeah, that would be nice.
In Germany, you guys are on other social platform, right? What is that called?
Oh, I'm not a good example. I'm on no social network
Okay.
present. Completely off the track regarding this.
No worries.
No, I think yeah, it was Xing for a while, but I think LinkedIn is getting more market share.
Yeah, yeah. Because recently, like I'm working with German team with one of my client sites, so they had visited India. So that time I just had a word with them. They told they don't use LinkedIn there much.
What told you? What did they told you they use?
I don't know. They said some other thing, not LinkedIn. I
Okay.
think Zing, Ratna is saying Zing, right? Zing is
Yes.
what you
Xing.
guys use. Yeah, I'll also create my account. I don't have account on Zing. I'll have to create my profile there. Okay, guys, so that was all. And yeah, one important thing. Let me push my code so that you have access to it. It's very important.
We'll get the video with recording just as like the basic, yeah?
Yeah, you'll get the recordings. If you don't get, again, you'll have to reach out to me. I'll reach out to them
Yeah,
and
no
get you
problem.
the recordings. So I have videos on YouTube also. You can refer the YouTube videos if you want to learn more. I have videos on AWS. I do provide one-to-one technical trainings on weekends. And yeah, I mean, I have courses on Udemy and Coursera, and Great Learning and all are also there, but they use it for their corporate trainings. Spring Boot.
There are more and more courses on Udemy or YouTube. At least
Yeah,
Udemy.
I have 2 courses on Udemy, 4 or 5 on Coursera. Great Learning also I built it, Spring Boot, AWS, GCP courses in past. And yeah, on YouTube I started this year. I just created few videos, then I went out of time, so couldn't create more. But yeah, as soon as I'll find some bandwidth from daily work, I'll start creating more. This has
I have a question regarding Spring AOP.
Yep.
Is there something built in that I could, instead of defining the point cut, I could use like an annotation to activate? I mean, the logging example is a pretty good example. So, and maybe if I have some classes where I want to use it,
actually
or
in
is this something to build on your own?
yeah, I mean there are some things built by Spring Boot guys also, like pivotal guys. One of that is 1 minute. I am in the correct part. So one of that is exception handler, using custom exception handler. So that I'm covering in my fundamental courses. So you can register for my fundamental course. Let me try and give you the links for everything. Links for all my courses. I'll just go to
I know the exception handling as a controller advice.
correct.
Yeah.
@controller advice. So I'm covering that in the fundamental training. I think I'll have to go to notes. Check my iPhone. Got it. Copy. I'll move to my just post it on LinkedIn right now so that I can copy from here. Okay, got it. So I'm sharing the links. Okay, I've shared the links. You can register for these trainings. I also train on other things like Spring Boot, how to deploy applications onto a Kubernetes cluster, how to create Kubernetes cluster on AWS using EKS, how to create on GCP using GKE. So I am both certified AWS solution architect, professional solution architect, and GCP cloud architect. Okay, pushing the code here. So have you guys received the training links on the message chat?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe, can I access these via LinkedIn Learning? I think
No,
I
no,
have a
no,
LinkedIn
no.
Learning from my company.
No. So no, you can access these links. That will redirect you to the universe link. You don't need to be
Okay.
logged in. Just try it out. If you face
Yeah.
any issues, just let me know.
Yes, works.
It's just LinkedIn. When you post something on LinkedIn, they wrap it with their shortened link. I have a lot of good blogs on Medium also. So let me just push this. You open the Medium blogs. You can read. I write a lot of blogs. So this is the latest one which I have written. GCP file store versus data store. Mastering management and governance on AWS cloud. Dataproc versus Dataproc serverless. Choosing the right managed big data processing service on Google Cloud. Unlocking the power of big data. Exploring like, so the very nice blog which I've written is about low code, no code tool Prophecy and the other competitors. This is about GitOps tools like Argo CD, Flux CD. Yeah, this one is very interesting. This is the latest trend. So many founders or many entrepreneurs are now building these low code, no code tools. So here I've talked about it, like few of the tools which are there, like Matillion, Prophecy.io. There are multiple such tools now. So I'll share this blog post. Also, I'll try to upload more videos this year to the YouTube. I'll try to create a playlist on GCP also. AWS also I've created few videos. So on GCP also I'll plan for creating videos. This is the YouTube link. I've added the link in the chat. Yeah, let me share this link. Let me refresh. Okay, so I've added this. I'm sharing this link with everyone. You can clone the projects that you have learned from here, from this link. I think that's all for today.
Thank you for a nice session.
Thanks, Tom.
Yes, thank you very much.